Hello there guys and welcome back to the channel. Now very soon, tomorrow, in less than 24 hours, we are getting the new Battlegrounds meta. This is going to be the week 3 and 4 meta that will determine our season placement, season 32. And just like weeks 1 and 2, we get to keep both of the attackers buffs. So Mr. Fantastic's Resolve, where target champions knocking down the opponent, gain the debuff siphon passive, and if you have 3 of those, you get extra attack on your specials and heavies, as well as all 3 of Mr. Fantastic's pre-fights. And those are actually significant in this, because there's a lot of region involved. Buffet over time 3. Every 7 seconds, the next buff triggered by the attacker is nullified. Each time this triggered, defender gains a regeneration buff plus 15% of max health over 7 seconds. That is a whole lot of regen. Trust me when I tell you that. Generally, it's a very hard time just out damaging that. So you will want a way to deal with the regeneration, especially because Safeguard is going to be preventing you from doing a large amount of damage. So, with that, the important things to note. Mr. Fantastic's pre-fights also include Petrify, which means any champion with enough debuffs will not only be able to nullify, but also somewhat reverse the regeneration. All things, being unaffected by other champion abilities. So that's kind of crucial. You basically never want to lose those debuffs. Because if you combine the 40% Petrify with the 45% that you gain from Despair, you mitigate significant portion of the regen as long as you keep these debuffs up. And then apply more debuffs, obviously, with the Petrify. You can go into the negatives. That leads us to the MVP defenders for this meta. And the first MVP defender for this meta is going to be Solvark. There are so few good counters to this guy, because his regeneration rate cannot be reduced below 50%. And he gets willpower healing. And he's immune to the bleed and poison effects. So, he's a very, very tough nut to crack in this meta. In fact, I already have taken him to rank 3 specifically for this meta, because there are very few good counters to him based on his own mechanics, where you do want to get rid of his armor up passives. However, most of the champions who can do that are Cosmics, who are borderline unusable in this meta, and he has very few counters. Galen's probably the best one, but yeah, he's a very, very annoying champion to deal with. In similar nature, we do have, not this Hulk, but I mixed up my Hulks. I apologize. I meant to bring the Immortal Hulk here. I have a ton of tabs open, so it's a bit laggy, but Immortal Hulk. Because he's also immune to ability accuracy reduction, it's regeneration rate reduction, and he's very, very chunky. And any chances of you dealing with this guy will either involve a heal block, or it will also involve, trying to get rid of the debuffs that he's inflicted with, and then trying to bypass the safeguard, or it's a rough matchup. This guy is not easy to deal with either. And even if you do have champions, let's say like Warlock, it's still gonna take forever to deal with the guy. So it's very, very tough. Mr. Sinister, one of the craziest champions for this meta as well, because again, you can't mess with his regeneration rate, and he's quite annoying defender to begin with. And then obviously you do want to be careful that in case you are inflicting dots on him, that he doesn't throw them back to you, and he's going to be quite annoying. And then we have the rest. I know, this is kind of crazy. Sauron's actually a legit defender in this meta, because again, you cannot mess with his regeneration rate. And that's enough. And obviously he's resistant to bleed, and he is immune to poison. So Sauron's going to be a legit defender. Then we have, Toad. If you're in lower tier Battlegrounds, or 6 stars still are kind of used. Toad is also immune to regeneration rate modification. Then there's Wolverine Weapon X that could get some uses as well. Atuma cannot have his regen rate reduced too much. But, Onslaught's still going to destroy him, and, Jean Grey is probably capable of doing that fight decently well too, but he's a bigger issue than he normally would be. And then we have Baron Zemo, which again is a very tricky proposition for this meta to solve, Because if you do inflict debuffs on him, well, first of all, yeah, if you do inflict debuffs on him, then you're gonna get rooted, and then he's either gonna get fury buffs if you're immune to bleed, or you're just gonna get the bleeds on. And if you don't inflict the debuffs on him, then you're gonna have to struggle dealing with the safeguard. So it's not a great time. There aren't too many great counters to him. I think Lady Deathstrike is going to have some visibility. I don't think she's like as tough as many of the others that I mentioned, but she also is basically immune to regeneration rate modifications. And she can also be used offensively. Yes, Buffet is going to initially nullify her buff, but she does have access to heal block, which is going to be golden in this meta. She does her damage via dots, via rapture, and not too many champions are immune to it. And yeah, so she's kind of viable. Then Arcade is kind of an interesting champ to go up against in this meta as well, mainly because of his immunities from his pre-fights. So you have Incinerate immunity, you have Poison immunity, and you have Shock immunity. He is not immune to bleed, which is kind of the most common debuff, which is probably going to be the most common way to take him down. But also, any meta that makes Arcade chunkier makes him significantly harder, and his immunities to a ton of dots make him quite valuable. Then you have Bullseye, obviously, because he can also purify with his Sig ability, and it's just not the easiest champ to deal with. Shield can be kind of annoying with her cleanse mechanics, getting rid of debuffs, similar to Baron Zemo type thing. Nick Fury is still going to be a present defender. Of course, he's going to be. Korg is a viable defensive champion. I'm sure some people are going to run Mole Man as well. Photon is quite nasty in this meta. It's mainly because most of the skilled champions, the champions you would counter Photon with, don't really work well in this meta. And offensively, she's also perfectly capable because, you know, he can reduce the regen of opponents quite effectively if you're not going up against somebody from the beginning of the video. But now let's talk about offensive options. From the skill class, one of the best offensive options, besides the dual threat shields and Molmans and whatnot that I mentioned, is going to be Okoye. Yes, you will lose your precisions at the beginning of the fight, but Okoye still will apply plenty of debuffs, bypassing safeguard, mitigating opponents' regeneration. So Okoye is quite great for this stuff. And then we're going to have Will Vision. Just simple, she's immune to nullify, so over time is not really an issue. And obviously she bypasses safeguard, so if you're one of the people who invested in Will Vision, then congratulations. You're going to have her time to shine. Then we have Shuri. Get one champion that doesn't get buffs naturally, so you will never trigger the buffet node, and you do all the damage via shocks, via dots. So that is quite neat and helpful. Then we have Sentinel, just primarily because of that massive heal block. So Sentinel is going to be quite valuable champion to have as well, especially because Sentinel is like one of the few champions that can answer well against, iHulk and stuff like that. So then, if you don't laugh at me, if you do have highly ranked Rocket Raccoon at the very least at rank 3, you will get a good use out of him as well in this meta, where you can apply passive heal block. You'll be critting a lot. You do have access to some, raptures on your level 1s and power control, and stay aggressive on the opponent. So Safeguard is obviously going to be stopping him somewhat, but in between the raptures and the power control and the passive heal block, he's going to be a viable option. Mutant class doesn't really have great offensive champions for this. We're going to have Onslaught. He's going to work perfectly fine, especially with his Downteds and whatnot. Right. Then we have Deadpool X-Force. He works decently well because he just bypasses the safeguard, and he has enough nuke potential to basically take down a champion in one go in often cases. And nobody's immune to bleed, or whatever those debuffs are called. So highly ranked Deadpool X-Force is going to be very effective for sure. And then we have the Science class, and the Science class is going to be popping, which is the reason why I didn't really mention the Cosmic class as the Mystic class as valuable defenders, because some champions like Rintrop or Sasquatch in theory should be quite decent, but it's still not going to be great because there's going to be a ton of science champions in this meta. Nefaria is very good, and he again deals with opponent's regeneration. He steals plenty of it for himself, and he's going to be very effective in this meta for sure. Then we have Anti-Venom. Anti-Venom is going to be, you know, farming level 1s, inflicting debuffs, reversing regeneration. Deals with a ton of crucial matchups, like a good Serpent counter in this meta, a good Thanos counter in this meta. Anybody that's not immune to regeneration rate modification can suffer from the hands of Anti-Venom. And he also has access to Disorian, so he can kind of bypass Safeguard that way if fight calls for it. Human Torch, again, regen reversal. Leader is going to be the absolute MVP, one of the most devastating attackers. And then we also obviously do have, well, Titanium will never trigger the buffet over time, but we also have Void that I didn't mention separately. But because of that, and because of how powerful these guys will be, the camps from the beginning of the video are going to be the big problems. Because these guys, again, leader in this meta is going to be able to nuke just about anything. You know, be that Photon, who doesn't have many great options, be that Serpent, be that Thanos, so on and so forth. So definitely keep your eye out for that. Titania is decent-ish. She still has to contend with the Safeguard, but you apply plenty of debuffs. If you can modify opponent's regen rate, then on the regular you can kind of make sure that willpower healing at the very least don't get out of hand with the Petrify. And then level 3 does inflict the Disorient as well at 30% potency, at which point you can punch through Safeguard typically, because you can probably stack up at least a couple of these. So Titania is viable, but again, obviously we all know the issues with Titania in the game. High Evolutionary is going to be somewhat useful champion. He's somewhat decent on attack in this meta with all the debuffs and everything else. And then on top of that, you know, he's a bit harder to kill on defense than normal, so it's harder to nuke him. So there's like less great counters for him too. Then besides that, Spider-Woman is still going to do just fine, both offense and defense. We have Diablo, who's going to be quite important here, because again, some of the champions like Wolverine Weapon X, for instance, can have their regeneration rate modified by poison, and obviously he bypasses Safeguard, and you know, some of the cosmic threats that people might choose to run, he's going to nuke through that as well. Got Tigra, you know, basically neutralize the buffet over time node with, and still going to be quite crazy good. Nico, don't need to say much, very, very useful, solid dual threat champion. Kushala, again, all of her damage comes through dots. You can bypass Safeguard effectively very well there, and going to be useful. Then we have Shatra, again, reduces the regeneration because of her atrophy, and because it's buffet over time, they're going to regen significantly less, and her damage delivery method effectively does bypass Safeguard as well. One of the very few Cosmic Champions that's going to be viable next meta is going to be Null, because he has tons of debuffs and no real reliance on buffs. So Null is going to be a decently good dual threat option. And then we're going to have Galen, who's immune to Nullify and Cosmic class. Few interesting things to note with the Cosmic class. I personally, like this kind of, I think the first meta that I can remember myself, I am not running Thanos in my deck, because offensively, he's borderline useless, because he gets all his buffs nullified and opponents regen, and he can't punch hard because of Safeguard, and even his dots, you know, are not doing the best of the job here, especially when we're going up against champions that are immune to ability accuracy reduction, regen rate reduction. So yeah, I end up taking out Thanos just because there are plenty of Mystics that will deal with him just fine like they normally would, and then all the regen reverse champions are nuking him down. So yeah, I ended up not running Thanos. I am kind of thinking of taking Serpent out as well, because again, just like Thanos, all of the Mystic champions will still destroy him, like, you know, Kushalas and Shatras and whatnot. And then you do have like your Anti-Venom, your leader, and other guys that also kind of nuke him. So his defensive impact is reduced significantly. And a whole bunch of other champions are generally more effective against him, because even if you only inflict tons of debuffs, you still kind of reverse that regeneration with the Petrify. So he's not that strong of a defender here for sure. And the only defender that I think is still quite dangerous and kind of worth running is the Dark Phoenix. But again, with the Dark Phoenix, I'm kind of thinking of This might be a meta where I end up not running her. Well, maybe I will. But the point is that what are the chances of opponent not having a Mystic to destroy her if I'm not running any other Cosmics? Then again, half the Mystics don't do her that well anyway, so we'll see what happens with Dark Phoenix. And Dark Phoenix at the very least can somewhat be used offensively, I think, maybe. No, I don't. You have nothing to deal with the region. We'll see. But Cosmic Glass is not doing well, not at all. And that's kind of half the reason why Tech Class is going to be very, very strong. You know, there's going to be less Zola counters, so Zola is going to be a problem defender. He should have been pointed out here as well. Solvark is going to be a menace for sure. And yeah. So that is how the next meta is going to look like. Still have a few rank ups to do. I'm kind of like thinking, do I rank up iHulk and Sauron? Probably should, but we'll see. Let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you guys soon. Bye-bye. Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the channel. So we have all the information about the next